We were going through the chapter in the Great Master, the first manifestation of the teacher mood, Guru Bhava. So the Guru Bhava was constantly present from Sri Ramakrishna's childhood, but now after the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it is being manifested in its complete sense. Shardanandaji Maharaj is taking us through this wonderful phase of Sri Ramakrishna's life, and that is Guru Bhava, the teacher's mood. Now, Shardanandaji Maharaj was raising so many doubts himself, that is called in the scriptures Purva Paksha. Raising opposition, the author itself will raise up so many oppositions, imagining the thoughts in the mind of the readers, and then he goes on answering that, explaining that one by one, all the points you take up and answer that. Now, we shall see the continuity of this discussion. Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling again, if we are to believe the experience of Sri Ramakrishna himself, then he cannot even be classed amongst the ordinary men of absolute knowledge. There are so many living beings, as I explained to you in the beginning itself about Jiva Kotis, Ishvara Kotis. So Jiva Kotis are the ordinary people who will come to this earth. They go through so many experiences, and after the beatings and troubles and all the different experiences, now they get dispassion, they get vairagya. Finally, they want to give up everything, realize the truth and merge in the truth. So they are not bothered about the external circumstances, the other people who are suffering. They want to get their own liberation. So until the karma, the prarabdha karma lasts, they will keep their body, stay in this world in the form of the Jivan Muktas, liberated while living. And then once the karma is over, the prarabdha karma is over, they will merge in the Parabrahma Swarupa. But it is not so in the case of the Ishvara Kotis. So the Ishvara Kotis are kept separate by the Divine Mother. They will come again and again whenever she wants to this world, and they will set a model, ideal. They will become the gurus, the saints. We have heard of so many rishis, the saints, the gurus, the men of God. So they will lead a wonderful life. They are not bound by karma. They come out of their own sweet will. They are not bound by the karma, dragged by the karmas, prarabdha karma or sanchita karma or agami karma. But on the contrary, they come out of their sweet will to help other people, to show them the path to realization. So they come, they undergo all the difficulties in this world, and they will show the path, and then finally they will go back to God. So they are called Ishvara Kotis. But yet more powerful, the Lord Himself, who is the sustainer, who looks after the work of maintaining this universe. Just like Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma, he is the one who creates this world by the help of the knowledge of old creation. That is through the help of the Vedas. Vedas means Gnana Rashi, heap of knowledge. So from that older creation, he creates again this earth, there ends the work of Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma. Brahman, Parabrahman is the Nirakara Nirguna, formless and the attributeless, beyond everything, the highest. But this Chaturmukha Brahma is like you and me, a human being who, by his dint of austerities and doing lot of punya, will gain this position. Until Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma, it is position. Anybody can occupy it. By if the highest punya, anybody can occupy it. Just like Hanuman, because of his so much of work towards Lord Rama and so much of punya, Hanuman has been nominated by Ramachandra, the Avatara, the Ishvara, to be the next Brahma. In the next Srishti Sthiti Pralaya, the creator, Chaturmukha Brahma, will be the present Hanuman, who is a Chiranjeevi, who is living. So now, above this Ishvara Kotis, there is another higher thing, that is the highest Avatara Purushas, the Lord, the Ishvara. So he is the sustainer. He is Vishnu, Narayana, Vishnu, who, it's not a position. It's a very, very high state of Ishvara. So his work is to maintain, just like the manager of the company or the CEO. The CEO is just like the Parabrahma, Nirakar Nirguna, is of no use. Will be just there, the highest. But the manager of the company will be always there, available to run here and there of the estate. If there is any problem, he has to come down, look after everything, solve the problems, problem shooting. So that is Vishnu, Narayana. So he has to take up the burden of any problem in this created universe, take care of the things everywhere, set right the problems, problem shooting, bring in peace. So all that, bring in knowledge, all that work is the work of the great Vishnu. So that Lord, the sustainer, the maintainer, the maintenance, the work of the maintenance, he has to take the human form again and again and again and come down to this created universe at different places to set right the dharma, the righteousness, as Krishna himself has told in Bhagavad Gita, yada yada hi dharmasya glanihi bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham pritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkatam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Again and again, aeons after aeons, I have to come down to this earth taking the human form. If there is the tilt of unrighteousness going up, if the unrighteousness is becoming more, to set right that balance, to put down that unrighteousness and lift righteousness to its proper place, I have to take a human birth with the help of the Maya and come down again and again, taking a human birth. That's called avatara. Avatarana means coming down from that higher position. When the Lord takes a human form and comes down, coming down, ascending is a different arohana. Descending is avarohana. So that coming down, avarohana, is called as avatarana. Coming down, the Lord from that higher state comes down to our level to lift us to his level. So that is avatara. And again, they are also not bound by chance, no chance at all. If the Ishvara Kotis themselves are not bound by the karmas, they come out of their sweet will, then what about Lord Vishnu himself, the avatara, who is the avatar of that Vishnu? He doesn't have anything, it is his sweet will. But yes, he is also bound. The Ishvara Kotis may not be bound, but Vishnu or Avatara Purushas are bound in a way, in a different way. How are they bound? They are bound by the devotion of the devotees. The Lord is always, though it is not a bondage, just like the father and mother are bound by the love of the children, Likewise, who is our true father? He is bound by the devotion, is bound by compassion towards the living beings. They are suffering so much. That's why in the one of the stanzas of Ramakrishna Dhyanam, Abhedanandaji Maharaj, one of the direct disciples, writes, Vitaritum avatiranam gnana bhakti prashantihi pranaya galita chittam jiva dukkha asahishnum. So in that Ramakrishna Dhyanam, Swami Abhedanandaji Maharaj writes, Vitaritum, to distribute, avatiranam. Avatiranam is coming down, the Lord is coming down. Why is he, what is he distributing? Gnana, knowledge of our real self, Atman, Parabrahma Swarupa, the reality. Vitaritum avatiranam gnana bhakti. That is, bhakti means devotion, love towards God. Prashanti, so that give you eternal peace and joy. Prashanti. Pranaya, Galita, Chittam. His mind is soaked in that love for all the living beings. That Vatsalya, his whole mind is filled with that compassion, Vatsalya, the love of father and mother towards the children. It's called Vatsalya. So he's so Pranaya, Galita, Chittam, Jiva, Dukkha. The living beings are suffering, they have so much of pain. Asahishnum, he cannot bear it. Sahishnu means to bear. Asahishnu means he cannot bear, he cannot withstand the pain, the suffering of the living beings. So he takes a human form and comes down to our level to distribute knowledge and devotion. Is filled with infinite compassion. So he has come down to help us. So Jiva Dukkha Asahishnum, he cannot withstand the pain. Himself will take our pain on himself and suffer for that. So he will take all our sins. He doesn't have any sins. He's not bound by any karmas. He will take away all our karmas and suffer for himself. So that is maintenance. That is the sthiti. Srishti Brahma. Sthiti, Lord Vishnu. Then finally, after so much of time gap, the Srishti, Sthiti, then the same Lord takes the form of Lord Shiva. So he's not the destroyer. They give him that name, destroyer. Destroyer means he destroys all our agnana, the ignorance, nescience. All our avidya, suffering, everything will be destroyed, and he will take us back. The Parabrahma Swarupa in his higher position as Ishvara or Shiva or Rudra, he destroys all this creation, all the suffering, all the maya, takes us back to himself, merges it within himself, and gives us rest. That is Vinasha. Not destruction, but giving us rest. Yes, enough. You have played, you have suffered so much. Come back to me and take rest in me. So he destroys all our ignorance, Maya. So that is Shiva. So Vishnu is to lift us up, to remove our suffering, to show the path to God. He comes down. And that is Avatar Purusha, who is much, much higher, who is the greatest manifestation of God on this earth. They are called Avatar Purushas. They are higher above. Even if the Ishvara Kutis are not bound by the karmas, then what about the Avatar Purushas? They are bound by our devotion. That's why there is a saying, Ramakrishna used to sing a song. The Lord will easily give liberation to you, mukti, moksha, everything. But he will not give devotion, shuddha bhakti, pure devotion. Why? If you get pure devotion, then the Lord has to become your slave. He has to be always behind you, guarding you. So the Lord will easily give you liberation, moksha, mukti, and other things, but he will not give you devotion, pure devotion. If you get pure devotion, shuddha bhakti, pure devotion, bhakti for the sake of bhakti, not for getting any boons or some enjoyments on this world. Artharthi, jignasu, gnani. So pure devotion, They don't seek anything in return. They don't want anything from God. They want only devotion to God. They want to serve God. That is pure devotion. So if you have that pure devotion, then God has to become your slave. The Lord will become your slave. That's why it's very easy to get liberation, moksha, and other things, but very difficult to get pure devotion. So aspire for that higher pure devotion. So the Lord will become your slave. He will be always guarding you. He will be always behind you. So yeah, in a sense, Lord is bound to our devotion. He has so much of compassion, infinite compassion. He is bound by that compassion. There's nothing to be bound, but that infinite compassion towards the living beings of the Parabrahma has taken the form of Avatar Purusha or Vishnu. So the Avatar Purusha is the epitome, the condensing form of the compassion of the Lord, who comes down to take our sufferings away, suffer for himself, and lift us up. So, where is the question of bondage? So, that is Avatara Purusha. No karmas. Rather, he will take our karmas and liberate us, and he suffers for that. So, now let us see what Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling and what Ramakrishna himself will tell about himself. Again, Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, again, if we are to believe the experience of Sri Ramakrishna himself, he cannot even be classed amongst the ordinary men of absolute knowledge, the Jivakotis who have attained Gnana, liberation, like ordinary people like us. So, for we have heard Ramakrishna say again and again, we have heard the direct disciple Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, they have heard again and again Ramakrishna telling, one who was Ramachandra and Lord Krishna is now Sri Ramakrishna. So that Lord, the same Vishnu, the same Ramakrishna, that's why he gets the name Rama Krishna. Both are there. Both the ideals. The same person. Nothing is greater or smaller or something. The same Vishnu taking the form of Rama, taking the form of Krishna. Now he has taken the form of Ramakrishna. That's why he gets the name Ramakrishna. Now, after so many 600 years of struggle, the birthplace of Sri Ramachandra, which was destroyed by Islamic invaders, Babur, and they had built a masjid. They had removed that, and Supreme Court has given the order. It has been taken back by the court of law. They went through the right means. They didn't take into Himsa. They fought in the battle of court, and now they have won. They are going to build it. Now, all of us should support that, isn't it? Ramakrishna, our great Vishnu, who had taken that Rama. His temple is being rebuilt. All of us should pray for that hurdleless, Vighna, no nirvighna completion of that project. And we can also help in whatever way we can. So, what did Ramakrishna tell again and again? Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, one who was Rama and Krishna is now Ramakrishna. That is, he who incarnated himself as Ramachandra and Lord Krishna in past stages is present in the form of Sri Ramakrishna and is manifesting a wonderful divine sport. Each time there is a dharma glani, whenever there is decline in righteousness, he will be forced to come to lift that righteousness. That's why Krishna, Lord Krishna in Mahabharata, many people used to tell Lord Krishna was Pakshapati of Pandavas. Pakshapati means partial. Pakshapata means partiality. So the Lord Krishna was partial to the Pandavas. But no, Vyasa Maharshi tells he was not Pandava Pakshapati, he was Dharma Pakshapati. Because the Pandavas were following righteousness, dharma, So he was with them. If Kauravas were following dharma, then Lord Krishna would be with Kauravas. If the Pandavas were following adharma, then he would have be against them too. So the Lord is not partial to people, but is partial to dharma, righteousness. He comes down to lift the dharma, righteousness. So the Lord is dharma pakshapati. So Krishna was dharma pakshapati there. So to lift the righteousness, the Lord comes. So each time there is a dip, there is decline in dharma. So he comes down to lift it up. So this time in the Kali Yuga, the dharma, because of the consumerism, the invasion of the capitalism, all that enjoyment, sense enjoyment is at the greatest materialism. So adharma was dancing a dance of death, Tandava. So the Lord had to take up a lot of power and trouble to rectify this. That's why this time there was so much, because now dharma is standing only on one feet. In Hinduism, in our Puranas, in our scriptures, they compare the righteousness to a cow. So in the Kriti Yuga, the dharma righteousness was standing on all four legs. And in the next Treta Yuga, righteousness was only standing on three legs, the cow of righteousness. Then in the Dwapara Yuga, it was standing only on two legs. In Kali Yuga, that cow of righteousness is standing on only one leg. So the righteousness has dipped so much down. So just like in the earlier avatars, when he was Krishna, Rama, and other Varaha or Narasimha Avatara, he had to come down and kill the bad guys. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkrutam. Vinasham is kill, destroy the bad ones, and to protect the good people. Now, protecting the good people is there, that common factor is there. But if he goes on killing the bad people, all of us have so much of bad qualities and good qualities combined in us. So if the Lord starts killing, like in earlier things, Vinashaya cha dushkritam, then all of us have to be killed, because we have equal bad qualities and good qualities in us. That's why this time the Lord brought the Divine Mother in the form of Shantaswarupini, the Samharanupini, Bhagaladevi, Durga was transformed into Shantaswarupini, Sharada, and brought down. Suppose your mother itself is the judge or the policewoman. If you do some mistake, will she punish you? She will forgive you. So the punishing agent, Samhara Rupini, Durga, Bhagaladevi, she took the Shantaswarupini Sharada, brought down. Ramakrishna himself is in that Shantaswarupa, not killing. So what is their work? They will lift up the good people that is there. They will protect the good people. That sadhunam rakshanartham, that is always there. Paritranaya sadhunam. But there is no vinashaya cha dushkrutam. Then what are they going to destroy? They are going to destroy the bad nature of the dushkrutam. The bad qualities, the bad samskaras will be destroyed. But they will keep intact the bad people. They will transform the bad people into good people. So it is not vinasha, it is parivartanaya dushkritam. So the dushkritam, the bad people, will be not protected, transformed and protected. They will be transformed into good people, and they will be also protected. So that is the speciality of this avatar. So that's why you can see none of them, both of them are not carrying any ayudas. No arms, no trishula, no chakra, no sword, nothing. Simple as possible. Because they are transforming, they're taking away our unrighteousness, our sins, They're forgiving. That is the speciality of this avatara. It is not so, if you have any bad qualities in you, do not worry. Don't be afraid. They're not going to destroy you. They're so compassionate this time. They will be transforming you. They'll be lifting you up. Remove only your bad quality and make you a good person and protect you. That is the speciality of this avatara. So, Paritranaya sadhunam, if you are good, wonderful, they will protect you. Paritrana. Vinashaya dushkritam, Krishna told during the Treta Yuga, killing or destroying the bad people. But now it's not destruction, but parivartanaya dushkritam. Transformation. That's why so many drunkards, so many bad people, evil people, sinners, they all came to Ramakrishna. Prostitutes. So many people came. Ramakrishna would not send them away. Mother would not send them away. Such great sinners, they would take away their sins upon themselves, suffer for themselves, and transform them. So that is the speciality of this avatara. So one who was Rama and Krishna is now Ramakrishna. So earlier avatara, the work was comparatively easy. When Ramakrishna came as Rama and Krishna, it was easy. Just kill some Rakshasas, the Asuras, the demons, and the work is over. But now it's not so easy. You have to take the sins, you have to transform them, you have to be so patient, no killing. You have to treat them like children, just like the mother, Holy Mother Sharda Devi used to tell. Yes, my children may have dirtied themselves going to the mud or some bad places and getting themselves lot of dirt and filth into your body. But as a mother, I cannot shoo them away because they have become dirty. I have to take them to my bosom, to my lap, clean them, though they are dirty, clean all their sins, remove all their bad qualities, make them pure. So as a mother, I have to do that. These are the words of Mother Sharda Devi. So both of them have come, the Shakti, the power, and the Lord together. That is the speciality. They have also brought the Acharya. Earlier, Divine Mother would come separately, and Avatar Purusha used to come separately. Acharya would come separately. But now, the Lord, the power of the Lord, Divine Mother Shakti, and Acharya, all have come together, and that is the divine trio. So, one who was Rama, one who was Krishna, is now Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna used to tell that again and again. That is, he who incarnated himself as Rama and Krishna in past ages is present in the form of Sri Ramakrishna and is manifesting a wonderful divine sport. If one is to believe this, one must admit that he is an incarnation of God, eternally pure, eternally awakened, and eternally free. And when one admits that, one cannot say that he is under the control of prarabdha. Prarabdha is the karma which has already started fructifying. Just like Shardanandaji Maharaj gave the example of the bow and arrow. So all the arrows in the quiver of the archer, they're the sanchita karma. That is all the armaments, arrows, the asras, shastras, which the archer has collected, has learnt all those archery. So now he will not use all that thing to fight against the enemy. He will see the strength of the enemy. Accordingly, he will take only such missiles or the arrows or the astras to suit the power of the enemy. So he will not use all that he has collected. So that is called prarabdha karma. So he will take only that much of his karmas to fructify in that particular life. So that is called prarabdha. So now he has put it to the arrow, release that karma or that arrow on the enemy, or that it has to reach the target once it has come out. So that is prarabdha karma. It has started fructifying. Once you allow the arrow to come out with your bow, you don't have the power to withdraw it. You undergo it. That's why prarabdha karma is very strong, and you have to undergo, you have to suffer it. Anybody. That's why in India we have seen Elderly people, when they are facing lot of problems and troubles, they will put their head like, oh, prarabdha, they will tell. Means prarabdha means you cannot escape, you have to undergo that prarabdha karma. Prarabdha way, they will tell. So all the difficulties or people who are troubling them, they will call them as prarabdha. So my prarabdha karma is coming in the form of these people and other things, and they are troubling me. So no escape from that. That's why prarabdha karma has to fructify. But there is another karma that's called agami. After this, now we are doing new karmas that are going to come in future. That is agami karma. These are the three types of karmas. So the Lord is not bound by any of the karmas. He has come out of his sweet will. Can any karma bind the Lord himself? No, they cannot bind the Lord. But that karmas which we have, the Lord will take upon himself. He will neutralize by his punya karma, that is the all the tapasya he has done, or he has to suffer for himself. So that is why the Lord, out of his compassion, is doing that. So that's being explained. If you have this faith, so in this work of the Lord, who is eternally pure, eternally awakened, and eternally free, and when one admits, that is, when you have faith, deep faith in this working of the Lord, that itself can liberate you. In many places, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells that we can understand the work of the avatara, that compassion of the avatara who is coming down to help the people. If you understand that, that itself will liberate you. That faith itself will liberate you. So, who is eternally pure, eternally awakened, and eternally free. And when one admits, that is, you have faith, you have the belief, one cannot say that the avatara is under the control of prarabdha. Therefore, we are to give a different interpretation of Sri Ramakrishna's marriage. We give the same below. Sharadanandaji Maharaj is telling, he's giving the explanation for the reason for Sri Ramakrishna's marriage. The master one day said to Balaram Basu, what did he tell? Well, just tell me of what significance is marriage to one like me. I'm always thinking of God. I don't have anything other than God. Then what was the necessity of marriage to a person like me who never have body consciousness, always merged in God, samadhi? So what was the necessity to have the marriage? He is asking Balram, what is the place of a wife in the life of one who does not even know whether his wearing cloth is on or off? Why he can't wear clothes? The cloth doesn't stand on his body because he doesn't have any bondage. Just look at the children. Try to put some cloth on the body of the children, young children. They'll throw it away. They don't want. Why? Because they don't have the sense of shame. So we have that bondage of shame. Mana. It's called mana. Do the animals wear any cloth? Can you see the buffalo going to the cloth shop or the elephant going to the cloth shop to stitch a pant or a dress? Because they don't have the sense of shame. Similarly, at a very high state, the body consciousness itself is not there. But in the animals, the body consciousness is too strong, but the sense of shame is absent. So that's why, see the babies, they don't have that sense of shame because they don't have the body consciousness at all. So you can see they will be just roaming about naked, small children. And nobody will feel that too. Likewise, Ramakrishna had attained that higher Paramhamsa Avastha. He was like a small child, no body consciousness. So that bondage is not there. Shiva also is called Digambara. So many Jaina gurus, Tirthankaras, they were all, you can see depicted in their temple as Digambaras. No cloth on the body. They'll be just sitting. Even now there are some sadhus, they're called Digambaras and the Naga sadhus. So they can't wear their cloth because no body consciousness. So they try to practice that. But here it was natural to Sri Ramakrishna, always merged in Parabrahma Swarupa. So you can't think of his body at all. So Ramakrishna himself is asking Balaram, oh, well, just tell me of what significance is marriage to one like me? What is the place of a wife in the life of one who does not even know whether his wearing cloth is on or off? Balaram smiled and kept silent. So Ramakrishna himself continued. The master told, oh, I see, taking up a little vegetable from the plate and showing it to Balaram. Ramakrishna was telling, it is for this that there was marriage. So, in a joking way, humorous way, Sri Ramakrishna is telling, because I can't think of the world, I can't think, do anything, the work. So, somebody was needed to support me, to help me cook food. So, humorously is telling, showing that vegetable, cooked vegetable. So, it is for this, the cooking and looking after the needs of that avatar Purusha, because he cannot take care of himself. All the other saints, the sannyasins, are trained in such a way that they have to depend upon themselves. They should not be dependent upon anybody else because they are Atmaswarupa, they are complete. So they have to cook themselves, they have to do their begging or they have to do their work, everything. But Ramakrishna as an avatar Purusha is in such a high state, no sense of body consciousness at all. So he can't do his work properly. So now humorously Sri Ramakrishna is telling, oh, it is for this sake, cooking food and looking after me, that there was marriage. Otherwise, who would cook for me this way? Balaram, Basu, and other devotees laughed at it and smiled at it when Ramakrishna joked in this way. Really, who would have cared to see how I took my food if I was not married? They went away today. The devotees did not understand who went. Ramakrishna is telling they went away today. Who went? Ramakrishna is telling something which we can't understand. They went away today. All the devotees did not understand who went away. Ramlal's aunt, Ramakrishna would never mention because he didn't have that sense of ego at all, completely obliterated. The highest goal of spirituality or any path in religion or the basic, the foundation of spirituality or any path of religion or path to God, yoga is, Swami Vivekananda tells in Karma Yoga, the essence of all the Karma Yoga, any yoga or any religion, any path to God or highest realization is perfect self-abnegation. Perfect, self is selfishness or ego. Abnegation, negation, removal. Abnegation means complete removal. And so Ramakrishna had done that in toto, in perfection, perfect self-abnegation. So he didn't have even slightest ego. Only that simmering or little half-dead ego was there just to keep his body alive. That's all. So he would not mention Sharda Devi as his wife, Ramakrishna's wife or my wife. He couldn't tell that, my wife, to Sharda Devi. So he's referring to Sharda Devi as Ramlal's aunt. Ramlal was his elder brother's son. So to Ramlal, Sharda Devi will become aunt. So he's not telling, Ramakrishna is not telling my wife, Sharda Devi, referring to Sharda Devi as my wife. First of all, he's telling, they went away today. You would never tell Sharda Devi, my wife went away. So they went away. Then after that, don't try to imitate that. That was a natural thing to Sri Ramakrishna. So after removing the ego, completely merging himself, identifying himself with Parabrahma Swarupa, the Lord, the highest, that has become a natural trait to him. So seeing Ramakrishna just without getting the knowledge first, don't try to behave or imitate like Ramakrishna telling that, oh, this person, this body or something like that, and don't refer to your wife and children in that fashion, then there'll be trouble in the family. So just enjoy the life of Sri Ramakrishna, that's all. Don't try to imitate it literally. Take only the essence of it. So they went away today. The devotees did not understand who went away. Then Ramakrishna told Ramlal's aunt, it is Sharda Devi. He is not referring to to her by the name Sharda Devi or his wife. He's telling Ramlal's aunt. Do you understand? Ramlal is going to be married. That is marriage of Ramlal. So all of them have gone. They are going there to Kamarpukur to attend that marriage ceremony. So they have all gone to Kamarpukur. Sharada Devi has also gone. I stood and looked on impassively. That Shardanandaji Maharaj was there. I stood and looked on impassively. Really, it was as if just someone went, as if someone has gone. It doesn't attach anything. But afterwards, there was some anxiety as to who would cook for me. So now Ramakrishna is feeling anxious. Now, who will take care of me? Who will cook for me? Don't you see? All kinds of food do not agree with my stomach, Ramakrishna is telling. And sometimes there is not consciousness enough to take even food. Somebody has to force me to take the food. I don't have the body consciousness at all. Sometimes, first of all, because of my delicate stomach, after doing so much of 12 years of rigorous austerities, his digestive power had weakened because he would not give food for 6 years. He was sitting in one posture, no food, no sleep, no excretion, no defecation, just sitting in one posture. Somebody had to come and force the food into his mouth. He used to sit in that posture, simply meditating. So that was the Kathora Tapasya. So his stomach or his digestive power had become weakened. So now, not only that, because his mind is in the higher consciousness of Parabrahma alone, no body consciousness. So, where does he know when to take food? Should he take food? What for should he take food? He didn't have even that idea. Sometimes Sri Ramakrishna is telling, all kinds of food do not agree with my stomach because of the delicate position after the sadhana, after the spiritual austerities. And sometimes there is not consciousness enough to take food. I will not have consciousness enough that I will not know whether I have to take food or not. The idea of food is not there. When the body consciousness is not there, where is the question of food? She, that is the Holy Mother, knows what kind of food suits me. She makes this or that preparation based on my health condition. That's why the anxiety arose as to who would do it. Raising the topic of his marriage, one day at Dakshineshwar, Sri Ramakrishna said, do you know why one has to marry? There are 10 kinds of sanctifying ceremonies for a Brahmana's body, and marriage is one of them. In our scriptures, there are Shodasha Samskaras. All have to undergo. All that Shodasha Samskaras from birth, the Namakarana Samskara, the Chaula Samskara, then Upanayana Samskara, then the marriage, Vivaha Samskara, like that. There are Shodasha Samskaras. Samskara is to refine you. So for the refinement of the human being from the animal level to the human level, from the human level to the divine level, these refinements, samskaras, are given to all the human beings. That is called Shodasha Samskara. But here Sri Ramakrishna is mentioning that, do you know why one has to marry? There are 10 kinds of sanctifying ceremonies which will make us pure. Sanctifying ceremonies for a Brahmana's body. Brahmana means it is Brahmanatva. By nature, whose mind is going towards God, who is not after making money, who is not after the bodily enjoyment, who is always concerned about meditating upon God, and who is always thinking about the welfare of humanity. Sarve jana sukino bhavantu, that is his attitude. Such a person who is always going towards God is called Brahmana. So, do you know why one has to marry? There are 10 kinds of sanctifying ceremonies for a Brahmana's body, the body of a Brahmana. And marriage is one of them. Samskara, one of the sanctifying ceremony, samskara. So now you can see Ramakrishna, and through that Shardanandaji Maharaj explaining what is the duty of a householder. Marriage is not just to have bodily enjoyments, sensual gratification, and just create, procreate children, and then be attached to them and enjoy this world. It's not that. Then what is Grahastha Dharma? What is marriage? It's a sanctifying ceremony. Through this, taking this opportunity, Shardanandaji Maharaj, through the words of Sri Ramakrishna, is giving us what is the duty of a householder, what is the duty after you get married, after the samskara of the marriage, vivaha samskara. So, Ramakrishna is telling it is only when one has performed all of these samskaras, sanctifying ceremonies, that one can become a religious teacher. When you have performed all these samskaras, then only you can become a religious teacher. So Ramakrishna is not an ordinary guru, like any saint or sannyasin or something. Some people can take up sannyasa even without going to the Grahastha Dharma, because they might have finished, Shankaracharya tells that they might have finished all those experiences in their other lives, last life. So there is no necessity, they directly jump. They will not go through this Grahastha Dharma. They directly go to the Vanaprastha, no Vanaprastha also, Sannyasa Dharma. So generally a Hindu or any human being in India tradition, the Hindu has to undergo these 4 ashramas. The first is the Brahmacharya ashrama. After the Upanayana ceremony, studying, education, bachelor's life, that's called bachelor's. That's why you can see even that remnant of that system is there in the Western education too, because all that European culture came from the Indian culture. So that's why even the language is called Indo-European group of languages. It has come from Sanskrit. So the culture also, a lot of cultures have come from India only to the Europe. So now you can see that while you are educated, you get that degrees, bachelor degrees, BA or whatever, it is all bachelors. So bachelor degree, whatever you do is bachelor degrees. So what is that bachelor? Brahmacharya ashram. So everybody, when they have to get the samskara, sanctifying this thing, they have to undergo this aspect of life from childhood, age of 8, they get the Upanayana samskara up till they finish their education. That is called Brahmacharya ashrama. And who is the ideal for that life? Ganesha. So he is the ideal for Brahmacharya ashrama for the students. So everybody has to undergo that Brahmacharya. Then it is Grahastha. Then it is Vanaprastha. After the enjoyment of your life through dharma, artha, kama, moksha, all these 4 purusharthas, then they have to practice dispassion and love towards God and meditation. So they have to take up the Vanaprastha ashrama. Both husband and wife have to go to some secluded place and stay there in the forest or some place and retreat. Try to meditate on God, because still that attachment towards wife and husband will be there. Then after that, they have to the husband has to give up the wife, or the wife to husband, and get separated. That is sannyasa. So all have to undergo these 4 stages of life. It is called ashrama. Brahmacharya ashrama, then Grahastha ashrama, then Vanaprastha ashrama, then it is sannyasa ashrama. Everybody had to undergo if you are following the Hinduism. But some, because they have finished all those experiences in their last life itself, they could jump from Brahmacharya ashrama into sannyasa ashrama. No Vanaprastha and Grahastha ashrama. But now they don't have in this life the experience of these 2 things. So while teaching to the world, they may only tell about brahmacharya and sannyasa ashrama, the higher ideal. But what about these people who are in the vanaprastha and grihastha ashrama? Majority of the people are in that stages of life. So who will set in the ideal for them? Sannyasins are setting, the saints are setting very high ideal. Who will be setting the ideal for the grihasthas who are in majority, large number? So the avatar purusha should set ideal not only for the brahmacharis and the sannyasin, the highest, to all the stages of life. So the avatar purusha has to set an example, ideal or principle, or that guna, kalyana guna in perfection, not only to for the children, as a son, as a student, as a bachelor, as a brahmachari, as a grihastha, as a father, as a mother, as a sister, as a brother, everything he has to set an ideal, perfect life. So he has to undergo this samskara too. He's not an ordinary person. He's not an ordinary saint. He's not an ordinary guru. He has to set an example. He has to set ideal. All the whole universe, Vishwaguru. That's why Ramakrishna himself is telling, it is only when one has performed all of them, all the ideals, all the sanctifying ceremonies, that one can become a religious leader. Vishwaguru. He used to say again, one who becomes a man of perfect knowledge, Paramahamsa, has finished experiencing all states, from those of the scavenger, from those of the sweeper, scavenger, who does the cleaning of the filthy things, of the dirt, excreta, and everything is called a scavenger. So the experience from the lowest scavenging and sweeper to those of the king. So a Paramahamsa, a true religious leader, Ramakrishna used to say, one who becomes a man of perfect knowledge, Paramahamsa, has to finish experiencing all the states, from those of the scavengers and sweepers to those of the kings. There should be no thing on this world which is untouched by the Paramahamsa or the true religious leader, who is to set example to everything, every stages of life, from the scavenger and sweepers to those of the kings and emperors. Otherwise, how could true dispassion come? In the mind, there will be some desire. I have not experienced that state. Then you might have to come and experience that. Otherwise, how could true dispassion come? The mind will feel eager to experience that which it has not experienced and will become restless. Do you understand? Sri Ramakrishna is asking. Sharadananda Maharaj is watching. And Ramakrishna is explaining. He knows. Ramakrishna knows that Sharadananda in future will be writing the life. Even that work was not destined to Vivekananda, one who had understood Sri Ramakrishna in perfection. Vivekananda declined. I can't do that. Somebody else is prepared or brought down by the God himself to do that work, and it was Sharadananda. So Ramakrishna is telling, do you understand? The mind will feel eager to experience that which it has not experienced and will become restless. Do you understand? Suppose you set an ideal only for the highest sannyasa or vanaprastha or brahmachari. And what about the grihasthas, the married people who are in majority? They will think, oh, he's not our ideal because he's a sannyasin, he's a vanaprasthan, he's a brahmachari. How can he become our ideal? We can't follow him because he has not set an example for us. He has not undergone the experiences, the difficulties which a grihastha has to undergo. So, as an avatar purusha, as a true religious leader, Ramakrishna had to set an example to every aspect of life. Not one is to be left out. Every aspect of the life, every stages of the life, Ramakrishna had to set an example. That is the work of the avatara. Don't think it is very easy. Oh, everybody can become avatara. No, everybody cannot become a guru. Everybody cannot become a religious leader. Everybody will aspire to become a guru. Is it so easy? There was one person who wanted to join the ashrama. He went to the ashrama, old type of ashrama. So before going and joining, he wanted to go and see the whole ashrama. He went. So many monks or the ashrama vasis were cleaning the cow shed. They were removing that cow dung, giving bath to the cow. Some were feeding the cow, some were bringing the grass, and some were going to the field to do the gardening. Some were going to do the agriculture work. Some were plucking fruits. Some were cleaning the streets. Some were doing puja in the temple. Some were cleaning the temple. Some were serving the people who were coming there. Some were serving the guru. So all the work, so much of work was going. Then this person wanted to join the ashram, was thinking, which work shall I take up? What shall I do? What is my this thing? Then he went, he saw one old guru with grey, silvery hair, silvery beard, sitting there majestically at one place on like a seat like throne. And thousands of people are coming, giving him present, falling at his feet. And he's blessing them. So he looked at, very happy. And after that, he told, I want to join the ashrama. Well, okay, what will you do in the ashrama? That in that room, that one person with silvery hair was sitting there and blessing all of that, all the people and taking all the present. I will do that job, the guru's job. I will become the guru job. So is it so easy? Everybody wants to become a guru. Everybody wants to go to the highest. So you have to first do the hardship of, there is a saying in India that one who can become the servant, only he can become the king. That is told in South India, Aladavanu Arasanagavalla. One who can really become the servant, a scavenger, then only he can become the king or the emperor. So he has to undergo all the difficulties in life, all the experiences. Then he can understand every aspect of life. So it's not so everybody aspires to become a guru. Everybody wants to advise. Everybody wants to teach. It's not first. You have to become, you have to undergo all the difficulties. You have to learn what is the secret of everything. You have to have a child like Ramachandra. First, you have to become a father like Dasharatha. First, you should become a mother like Kausalya. But everybody wants to have a child like Krishna and Rama. Is it possible? First, learn to be Dasharatha, Kausalya. So you have to train up your mind. Then only Rama will become to be born in your family. Otherwise, demons, bears, lions, jackals, hyenas will come to the family to be born as our children. So that is very, very important here. So the mind will feel eager, Sri Ramakrishna is telling, to experience that which is not experienced and will become restless. Do you understand? Now he is giving the example of the dice, the game of dice, or just like the chess. The game of dice, later on taken over by the Western people, was transformed into the shatranj, or what you call the chess, the game of chess. It originated in India. So he's giving the example of the dice or shatranj, and he's telling a piece has to move through all the squares before it reaches the home. Have you not seen it at the time of the game of dice? It is similar to that. Although the master Sri Ramakrishna stated this as a reason for the marriage of an ordinary teacher of religion, we shall now explain the special reason for Sri Ramakrishna's marriage, as we have understood it. Sharadananda Maharaj is telling, as he has understood, or they, the direct disciples, have understood. Although Sri Ramakrishna stated this as the reason for the marriage of an ordinary teacher of religion, we shall now explain the special reason for Sri Ramakrishna's marriage, as we have understood it, that is Shardanandaji Maharaj has understood it. The scriptures teach us at every step that the purpose of marriage is not enjoyment. Our scriptures take up Vedas, Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita, Puranas, Tantras, Agamas, whatever you take, whichever scripture in Hinduism, at every step it teaches us marriage or Grihastha Dharma is not only for enjoyment. We think that is only license given for enjoyment, sensual gratification. But Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, no, it's not only for enjoyment. Yes, you have to note that four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So Kama, fulfilling your desire. Artha, enjoying the wealth, gaining more wealth, money, enjoying all entertainments. That is Artha. And Kama, fulfilling your desires. All your bodily desires, mental desires, fulfilling that. For the Grihastha, they are juxtaposed or they are sandwiched between Dharma, righteousness, and Moksha, liberation. Only through this channel, righteousness and Moksha, liberation, it should be guided by these two, our desire to enjoy and this desires and enjoyments. Kama and Artha are to be guided by these two. At every step, it is showing it is not just enjoyment, bodily enjoyment, sense gratification, Grihastha Dharma or married life. But every step, our scriptures are telling it is for righteousness. It is for moksha, liberation, to get the highest goal of life. This Kama and Artha have to be used. So now you can see the scriptures. Shardanandaji Maharaj is reminding us, teach us at every step that the purpose of marriage is not enjoyment, is not only sensual gratification. That's a small portion. To observe the rule of maintaining the creation of God is the ideal. Note it, please. It's very important. Nobody tells any grihastha what is their dharma, what is their work. So everybody should be aware of it. It's very, very high. The ideal are very high. So to observe the rule of maintaining the creation of God by producing virtuous children and thereby doing good to society should be the purpose of Hindu marriage. So that is the important aspect of Grihastha Dharma. What is that? To observe the rule of maintaining the creation of God by producing virtuous children and thereby doing good to society should be the purpose of Hindu marriage. So they would be telling, oh, a Grihastha should have a son, and that is the goal of Grihastha's life. If they don't have a son, will be doomed to hell and that and this. No, that is not the idea. The real idea is not to have just children like piglets and like dogs and this thing. They too have, all the animals have children. They have male children. Is that the goal? No. For the sake of this creation of the Lord, to observe the rule of maintaining creation of God by producing virtuous children of character, children of good conduct, to bring and train them to be proper citizens, enlightened citizens, is the goal of Grihastha Dharma, producing virtuous children. So how can you know whether the children will be born or good or bad? And thereby doing good to the society should be the purpose of Hindu marriage. The scriptures tell us this again and again. At some place, Swami Vivekananda mentions in the complete work, mentions children born to lust, kama, only the demoniacal nature children. The children having animal tendencies, it uses the word children born to kama, only lustful desire. If you procreate children by lust, then Swami Vivekananda tells that bears, balukas, jackals, foxes, hyenas, such animals will be waiting from the animal kingdom to get a human birth. So when you have impure thoughts, when you procreate with lust, with kama, then such children will be born. Then see the society. Why are they such so many thieves, people who are deceiving, people who are creating himsa, violence? Why they have come fresh from the animal kingdom? Why are they so tamasic? Come from the buffalo kingdom. What will they do? Come from the jackals and hyenas, carnivorous animals. What will they do? They have, that is their samskaras. Who has brought them to this world? You, the grahasthas, have brought them to the world. So it's in your own hand. So that's why in olden days, in the Satyuga and other places, even until now, we have seen such parents before giving birth to children, even before the child comes into the womb of the mother, both the mother and the father had to do a lot of tapasya. They used to do vratas, homa, havan, puja, upavasa. They used to fast. Have you seen Swami Vivekananda's mother? She used to do so much of fasting. She used to do so much of puja to Lord Shiva. To give a child like him, Lord Shiva. She wanted a child like Shiva himself. So for so many years she did vrata, puja, tapasya, fasting, austerities. She used to ask her aunt who was living in Kashi, Varanasi, to do the puja there to Vireshwara Shiva. She used to go and do that Vireshwara Shiva puja there. The Vireshwara Shiva temple is there in Kashi. Go and see that. Even now, the aunt would do the puja there. At the same time, when that aunt would do the puja, here, the mother of Swami Vivekananda used to do puja, fasting, everything here for so many years. And after so much of austerity, so much of tapasya, she got a child like Swami Vivekananda. Even after getting Vivekananda, when he was very mischievous in his childhood, what was the Udgara? What would the mother tell? I prayed to Shiva to give a child like you, Shiva, but you have given a demon to me. You have sent a demon, you are Bhutagana. That means that was the ideal of the Grahasthas. The mother and the father used to do so much of tapasya and austerity. The children were not born out of lust or kama. They would, before even the birth, before even anything, they used to do a lot of tapasya. The father and the mother, the rishis, used to do so much of tapasya before getting a child or giving birth to a child. That's why so many rishis were born. Great rishis were born to them. Such great personality would be waiting. The great saints, the great realized souls, the great men will be waiting to get an opportunity to come and be born. They can't be born in the demoniacal natured people, the grahasthas, the family of the impure people. They want somewhere where the saintly people are there. They'll be waiting for that. So the father and mother as grahasthas have to do a lot of tapasya, austerities, prayers, fasting and all those things to get children. So that is the ideal. That is the goal of the grahasthas, not just enjoyment and sense gratification. So to observe the rule of maintaining the creation of God by producing virtuous children and thereby doing good to the society should be the purpose of Hindu marriage. Where are we? Where is our ideal? We have forgotten completely. We don't read our scriptures. Then how can you understand what is the goal of this married life, Hindu marriage? The scriptures tell us that this again and again. Does this mean that the Hindu should have no self-interest in his marriage? Does it mean that the Hindu should never enjoy in his life sensual gratification? Do the scriptures teach such absurd things? No, they do not. The authors of the scriptures had perfect insight into human nature. They knew that the average man, weak as he is, cared for nothing but self-interest, and that he would undertake nothing unless it promised the same, promoted the same. So when they laid the above rule about marriage, they took this feature of human character fully into account, the weakness of human beings. They knew that the only way to help self-centered man is to help him connect his self-interest with some high ideals and motives. Bah. See, why are the scriptures putting all these rules and regulations? What are the scriptures? What are they teaching? What a wonderful way Shardanandaji Maharaj is giving out the secret of our scriptures. I'll read that again. It's very, very important. We have to understand this. The rishis and munis, the great people who created these scriptures, who gave out these rules and regulation, they knew that the only way to help the self-centered, the weak human being, man, is to help him connect his self-interest with some high ideal and motives. Men would otherwise be entangled in the bondage of births and deaths and suffer endless pain. So that's why connect that, give a high turn towards that self-interest and selfishness and the sense gratification, and lift them up to the higher level. So in that way, using the weakness of a human being, they are giving a turn Godward. That is the goal of the scriptures. What a wonderful way the significance of the scriptures has been given out by Shardanandaji Maharaj. That's why they are great. So when we read that, we will understand the true essence of Hindu scriptures. We just mechanically follow, or we may get it, the priest may tell, we do not know what the rituals are. So many rituals, all these true great secrets are hidden there. So people like Shardanandaji Maharaj, who were realized souls, the great souls, they can only give us the secret of all these things. So men would otherwise be entangled in the bondage of births and deaths and suffer endless pain. Man runs after the sensuous enjoyments of sight, taste, etc., and consider them to be very pleasing and attractive, only because he has forgotten his own nature, which is eternally free. That is our true nature. But because of the Maya, because of the bondage, nescience, and ignorance, so man runs after sensuous enjoyments of sight, taste, that is Indriyas. Yesterday, while dealing about Bhagavad Gita, we were talking about Krishna telling Indriya Nigraha, sense control and mind control is the only source for all joy and peace and shanti, without which you cannot have anything. So again, you can see that man runs after the sensuous enjoyments of sight, taste, etc. There is no Indriya Nigraha, there is no sense control, and considers them to be very pleasing and attractive, and that is considered as the goal of life. Gold rush, just going for making money, they think is the goal of life. Collecting money, collecting property and enjoyment, going to places of enjoyment, tourism, that only they think, that going to hotels, going to restaurants, cruise, that is a goal of life, they think. Then they enjoy. No, that is not true. That's our weakness. Considers them to be very pleasing and attractive only because he has forgotten his true nature, forgotten his own nature, avidya, agnana, ignorance. But in reality, all human beings are eternally free. But how few are the people who are intelligent enough to understand that all pleasure is connected forever with pain? Can pleasure come without pain? They are the Two sides of the same coin. If you take pleasure, pain has to come with it. If you take the crown will come with the thorns too. It'll prick you. So pleasure has to come with pain. No escape. So Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, but how few are the people who are intelligent enough to understand that all pleasure is connected forever with pain, and that if one wants to enjoy pleasure, one will have to be simultaneously ready to suffer pain also. Swami Vivekananda used to say, pleasure comes to people with the crown of thorns on its head. The same thing I have learned from Vivekananda only. Vivekananda is telling, pleasure comes to people with a crown of thorns on its head. People who are busy enjoying pleasure only have no leisure to think that it has this crown of thorns on its head, and that they will have to be ready to hug pain also, if they welcome pleasure as their own. Therefore, the scriptures remind them of this fact and say, children, children of immortality, why do you consider the attainment of pleasure as the goal of your life? If pleasure is accepted, pain also has to be welcomed. Why do you not find your life's fulfillment in a higher value and look upon the pleasurable and painful experiences of life as your teachers? They should be your teachers, that's all, to move forward. That higher value, the one worthwhile aim of life is to be delivered from both pleasure, is to be delivered from both pleasure and pain for eternity. That should be your goal. The aim of the authors of the scriptures is evidently to introduce an element of discrimination between good and evil, the permanent and the impermanent, into the enjoyments of the married life through the inevitable round of pleasurable and painful experiences. They seek to lead man onto a thorough dispassion for the seeming momentary pleasures of the world. That is the goal of the scriptures. That is the goal of the married life, to bring you the experiences through the inevitable round of pleasurable and painful experiences. They seek, the ideal of marriage is to seek to lead man onto thorough dispassion for seeming momentary pleasures of the world, so that he may thereafter be filled with a genuine love for God and go forward with great eagerness to be blessed with his vision, to have the vision of Lord, or to understand his own real self, Atma Vichara, Atma Gnana, taking him to be the essence of all essences, taking the Lord to be the essence of all essences. To reach that essence of all essences is the goal of married life, to bring that dispassion, to show that through pain and pleasure, they are impermanent, to make that as the teacher, to take her to higher life. That is the goal of the married life. There is no doubt about the fact that the mind will give up what it enjoys with discrimination. So, goal of the scriptures, goal of the married life is enjoy the sensual things with discrimination. Know that it is painful, it will give you pain. But your real nature is the Atma Swarupa, Parabrahma Swarupa. Know that for certain and then enjoy. Then you will get discrimination, Viveka. You have to enjoy the world just to know that it is painful and to give it up. To learn discrimination, Viveka. This is wrong, this is right, this is true, this is false. This is painful, this is pleasurable. Then give it up both and go upward. So there is no doubt about the fact that the mind will give up what it enjoys with discrimination. To give up that, you have to enjoy that with discrimination, knowing the knowledge, having the knowledge. That's why the Grihastha Dharma is juxtaposed between Dharma and Moksha. Enjoy, Artha and Kama, entertainment, everything. But know for certain what is righteousness, what is true, what is right. Then what is your goal? What is your real self? So know all these things. Have that knowledge and then enjoy. Then you will get discrimination. You will get dispassion. There is no doubt about the fact that the mind will give up what it enjoys with discrimination. That is, with proper assessment of advantages and disadvantages. That is why Sri Ramakrishna said, children, children, Sri Ramakrishna used to tell children, the discrimination between the real and the unreal is very, very necessary. Children, putraha, the discrimination between the real and the unreal, the discrimination between the real and the unreal is very, very necessary. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell that, to etch that in our mind. Children, the discrimination between the real and the unreal is very, very necessary. One should always have discrimination and say to one's mind, one should always have discrimination and say to one's mind, you mind are eager to enjoy many things, to eat this, to put on that and this cloth, to wear such and such shoes, to fill up your wardrobe with so many varieties, to go here and there, to that restaurant, to this restaurant. Ramakrishna is telling, not telling that, I'm adding that. Ramakrishna is told only, you mind are eager to enjoy many things, to eat this, to put on that and so on, but discriminate and see that the five elements out of which potatoes, rice, pulses, etc. are made are also the ingredients of the sweets like sandesh and rasgulla and other delicious sweets. Again, the bodies of yourself, because there is craving for the enjoyment of the body, the flesh. So the bodies of yourself and of all other men and women and also of animals such as cows, goats or sheep are made up of the very bones. You have so much of attachment and craving for that flesh and body to enjoy the body. So what is it made up of? Ramakrishna is showing the right way to discriminate, vichara. It is made out of the same very bones. You just aspire, get attached to that skeleton, flesh. On that bone skeleton, it is flesh, blood, pus, serum, marrow, derived from the same five elements, excreta, urine. These are the things in the body. You aspire for these things, of which the body of a beautiful woman or a man too is made up of. Why then do you crave and die for it? Not the words of Sri Ramakrishna. Why then do you crave and die for it? By no means will it lead you to the realization of God, the highest, the true essence. Your real nature is God, yourself, Atma Swarupa. You are of the nature of immortality, without death, without pain, highest infinite, joy absolute, highest knowledge, consciousness absolute. And you are aspiring for these things, dirty things. Ramakrishna is telling, it is nothing but flesh, blood, marrow, pus, derived from the same five elements, Panchabhuta, of which the body of a beautiful woman or a beautiful man too is made up of. Why then do you crave? Why then do you crave for that body, dirty body, and die for it? By no means will it lead you to God realization, realization of your true self, which is the essence, the existence, knowledge, bliss. If the mind cannot desist from them, still, then they should be enjoyed once. Even after the discrimination, your mind is craving for that flesh and the body, then okay, just to show it with the discrimination, enjoy it once. Then they should be enjoyed once or twice with due discrimination and then finally renounced to give up. You have to enjoy that only to give up. Take this example. The mind is persisting in the desire to eat rasgullas and would by no means obey the reins of restraint all your effort at discrimination are being set at naught, then bring some rasgullas, put them into your mouth, and say to the mind while masticating them, mind, this is what is called rasgulla. This is also made out of the combination of the five elements, Panchabhutas, of which potatoes and patol, or even what you call the karela, the bitter gourd, is made up of. This also, when eaten, will be converted into blood, flesh, fecus, and urine within the body. It is sweet as long as it is in the mouth. You will not feel the taste when it goes below the throat again. If you eat too much of it, you will fall sick, you will fall ill, and still you are so intensely hankering of such a thing, for such a thing, fee upon you. Now that you have taken it, don't want to, don't want to eat it again. Looking at the devotees who were to renounce the world, it is only with regard to small matters that their renunciation is possible after their enjoyment with discrimination. But with regard to big things, this is not possible. One gets entangled as soon as one begins to indulge in their enjoyments. That is why such desires should be driven away from the mind by becoming aware of their defects through discrimination. This is the way how to discriminate. But with smaller things, rasgulla and other things, you can enjoy, tell that. But with bigger things, like the drugs and the alcohol and the flesh, do not go even to try. You'll be caught in that snares, Ramakrishna is telling. It's only with regard to small matters that this renunciation or the discrimination in this fashion is possible after their enjoyment with discrimination. But with regard to big things, do not even try. It is not possible. One gets entangled as soon as one begins to indulge in their enjoyment. That is why such desires should be driven away from the mind by becoming aware of their defects through discrimination. So this is the goal of Grihastha Dharma, not to be entangled in the enjoyment, sense gratification, to know, experience it, and see what it is so painful and give it up. That is the goal of Grihastha Dharma, that is the goal of marriage, and that is the reason why Sri Ramakrishna married, to show what is the ideal married life. So, what a wonderful ideal for Grihasthas. Every aspect, as an avatara, Ramakrishna had set an example to every aspects of life. The Grihasthas cannot be given up. So Ramakrishna has set an example. He married for that sake, not for cooking, not for getting some service from Sharda Devi, to show what is ideal married life, to be a adarsha, to be a ideal. So now, what a wonderful thing we learned today. So we will start the discussion here. It is really wonderful to hear all those things. We'll take up this same discussion tomorrow, Friday morning, again, same time, 6:30, our South African time, and 10 o'clock Indian time. We'll meet again to discuss this wonderful life of Sri Ramakrishna, the great master. Then on Saturday, we'll have the Bhagavad Gita discussion, second chapter. The evening, 6 o'clock South African time, 9:30 Indian time. Then Sunday, Monday, we have again the great master study early in the morning at 6:30. Then Sunday, we have the Hinduism for children's classes. There are children who are interested in joining this discussion. We teach them different aspects of Hinduism, learning Sanskrit and Hindi alphabets. Then we are also taking them through yoga, pranayama, and other things. If there are children from the age group of 7 or 8 up to their graduation, or the age of 15 or 16, there are even children to the age of 18 or 15, 16, they can join these classes. There are two groups, for small children and little elderly children. Two groups are there. So people can make the use of these classes. So thank you. If you have any questions now, we can dedicate our time for question and answer. If you have any questions and doubts on the things which we have discussed today, you can. So if you don't have any questions or doubt, then I can conclude today's discussion with the closing prayer. ॐ प्रियतां पुण्डरीकाक्षः सर्वयज्ञेश्वरो हरिः तस्मिन् तुष्टे जगत्तुष्टं प्रीणिते प्रीणितं जगत् हरिः ॐ तत्सत् श्रीरामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु. Namaskar to all of you. We will meet again tomorrow morning.
Namaste, Swamiji. Have a good day. Bye.
Namaste, Manish ji.